Good morning. Thought I'd sit outside today on this absolutely glorious day. I love this time of year because I don't have to get up so early to go out and walk, watch the sunset. The sunrise. This morning it was at 6:30. It was absolutely beautiful. So this week's question of the week is, how do you cope with sudden change? And I wonder how many of you have experienced sudden change. I know that I certainly have in my life many times, some of which I wasn't expecting, some of which I chose. And how many of you have struggled with sudden changes? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, No Lag. So how do you cope with sudden change implies that it's difficult. The question implies that it's difficult to deal with it. And the word cope, good morning, Jackie. The word cope, how do you cope with sudden change? Also implying that you need something to cope with it, as if sudden change is perceived as bad. So I'm assuming the person that asked the question is thinking that either she's not coping with a sudden change or that it's difficult. And of course, when we are believing that something's difficult for us, wear the kind of cloak of, this is tough, this is difficult, I can't do this, I can't cope. And these are the stories that we often live in. But the irony here is that change is inevitable. Everything in the world of form is changeable, including your experience, including your... Sorry if you can hear my dogs. Don't know if you can hear them. I'll pretend that you can't. Growling at each other. Lost my train of thought now. Everything in the world, circumstances, relationships, bodies, thoughts, experiences. The irony is that everything is changeable and nothing is a given. You know, no life experience, no way of being. We're not entitled for things to stay the same. And so if we believe that things should stay the same and we have a sudden change in our world, we can sometimes feel it's unfair or it shouldn't be like this. And when we feel like it shouldn't be a certain way, we struggle with whatever's going on. There's an easier way to be when something's changed suddenly. If you have the notion or are open to the possibility that life is always moving, life is always flowing, life is always changing, and we aren't entitled for it to be a certain way. So you have a sense of more trust in life unfolding as it should, a trust in yourself, a trust that you're not in control anyway. And many people struggle with the of not being in control and do many things to try and create the illusion of control. And if this is you, you know, I was there, I was that person, I was incredibly anxious, I was controlling to the max in my life, to the point that it caused me chronic anxiety if things weren't the way that I expected them to be. And as I said in the beginning, I've had a lot of change in my life, some of which was out of my control in the sense that circumstances that were tragic happened in my life, some of which the changes that I actually brought about of my own desire to create change. When we have a change, because you have a brain that hasn't evolved, for a good few million years, we're still operating from, looking out for survival, needing things to be the same, having things on autopilot. The brain really struggles with change. And so this is very difficult for the human race because, whilst we are wanting to be free spirits and, trust the universe or trust God or trust yourself or just have faith that things are working out as they should, the brain's always forward thinking, forward planning, trying to make sure you're safe. And it does that by putting things on automatic pilot. It's why we have habits of thought, habits of behavior. It's why you're able to clean your teeth without thinking about cleaning your teeth, or drive your car without needing to think about driving your car, for the most part. I know I'm generalizing. However, change is a fact of life. People leave, people die, things change, things move, children grow, they leave home, children are born, relationships end. And these changes, there's often a loss. As women, if you're a woman watching this, you work in cycles. So often with a change, when it's come, we can grieve the change. We can grieve the loss of what once was, and that's perfectly normal. But most people don't allow themselves to feel the death, the loss of what's happened, and thus see the birth of something new. Like at this current point in England in the seasons, we're seeing the sort of end, the death of the summer and the beginning of autumn, which means, the leaves are starting to fall off of the trees. The sun, which was once like this time of day right above me, is now behind the trees, and it's going down, earlier in the day. So there's change happening all the time, every day. But there's something rather special if you can tune into that, with honoring that birth death cycle, with honoring a change in your life without going into, I can't cope with this, I can't do this, I need things to be different. And I think this is regardless of what the change is, whether it's traumatic change or whether it's because I don't know what the change is specifically that the person's talking to, but I do know that when I went through my own traumatic grief experience, the sudden change that happened twice in my life, because I fought it, because I resisted it, because I thought it shouldn't be this way, because I felt out of control, because I was in terrible grief. I wasn't accepting, I wasn't allowing, I didn't allow myself to feel the grief of the loss and the birth of something different, something new, which is what's happening here in England in the seasons. Things are bearing fruit, so there's loads of amazing fruit about, but you can tell that things are starting to, close down. There's grace in nature, and you are a part of nature. And there's grace in you if you allow it, if you allow yourself to let go, and rather than kind of surrender and let go in like a kind of energetic, like, I don't know how to say this, sadness. Surrendered to possibility and new life and new experiences and the newness that is all around us anyway, the wildness in you that is open potentially to things being different, because you are changing day by day, month by month, year by year, on a cellular level, if nothing else. Change is happening all of the time. You can cope with change if you tell yourself a different story. If you see that change is happening all the time, there's nothing that stays the same. The only thing actually that stays the same is the part of you that's inside, that's been with you since birth to now. Everything else is changeable. So how do you cope with change? By seeing that it's everywhere, that it's all around, that it's not in your control, and that you have more strength and more resilience than you could possibly imagine. And the words that you use create magic. So when we feel like, how do I cope with change? It's sort of like, as I said, it's sort of implying that it's hard, but it's not, because you're changing every day. And if you could just hold on to what I see in most of you, which is strength, which is resilience, which is potential. And then I hear the stories and the narratives and the spells you cast on yourselves, the energy of which becomes habitual. And we just get bogged down by that, swamped down by that often. And it will relate into our story of who we think we are. But you're not who you think you are. You're something way more, way more. I hope that answers the question or helps to open a space to see something different. Thank you for asking me. If anyone has any other questions for me for question of the week, just send me a message or let me know, and I'll talk to you very soon. Lots of love.